The dealer said. She hid a note in the door panel. I had to sit down. Ruth had been gone 18 months, and she was still protecting me. She knew something I hadn't let myself see yet, and she'd built her knowing into the bones of a car, the way I'd always built my feelings into metal, into grease, into the particular silence of a garage at 6 in the morning. That's what I thought about, sitting on the edge of my bed with the phone still warm in my hand. I thought, of course she did. Of course it was the car. But I'm getting ahead of myself. Let me take you back to where this started, to the garage, to the smell of mineral spirits and old vinyl, to the shape of a thing that wasn't a car anymore, but a kind of monument. I'm a retired mechanical engineer, 37 years at a civil infrastructure firm in Portland, Oregon, which means I spent the better part of 4 decades thinking in tolerances, not in feelings, not in memories, in allowable variation. How much play can you permit in a system before it stops behaving the way it should? What's the threshold between where that's acceptable and where that's become damage? These are the questions I know how to answer. These are the questions I trust. Ruth used to say I was the most precise man she'd ever loved, and she said it the way some people say something is almost perfect, like the precision was the beautiful part and the flaw both at once. She wasn't wrong. I measured things. I still do. I measure the gap between what I expected my life to look like at 70 and what it actually looks like, and I find it's a gap I cannot quantify with any tool I own. She died in October, 18 months ago now. Pancreatic cancer, which is the kind that doesn't negotiate. You don't get a second opinion that matters. You get 8 months if you're lucky, and Ruth got 11, because Ruth was the kind of woman who found a way to get the extra 3 months out of anything. A vacation budget, a recipe, a life. Even at the end, she was precise about it. She was comfortable, she was at home, she was in her right mind, until nearly the last week. I'm grateful for that. I hold on to the grateful part. The car had been sitting in the garage since the week after the funeral. A 1967 Mustang Fastback, midnight blue, original 390 cubic inch V8, 4-speed manual transmission. I'd restored it for our 30th anniversary. 14 months of sourcing parts myself, doing most of the mechanical work with my own hands, having a body shop I trusted handle the paint. I gave it to her on a Saturday morning in July with a bow on the hood that she said looked ridiculous, and she stood there in the driveway with her hand over her mouth and didn't say anything for a long time. Ruth, who always had something to say, she drove it on Sundays. Not every Sunday, maybe twice a month, out onto the river road where the lanes opened up and you could feel the engine breathe. She wasn't a fast driver. She just liked the feeling of being inside something that had been made with intention. That was her word. Intention. She'd run her hand along the dashboard and say, "Leonard, this is the most intentional thing you've ever done." I think she was right about that too. After she died, I covered it with a canvas drop cloth, and I didn't uncover it. I went into the garage for other things, the ladder, a tool, the recycling bins. I'd walk past it and feel the shape of it under the cloth, the way you feel the outline of something you're not ready to look at directly. The dust settled on the canvas. The garage got colder in November. I got through Thanksgiving and Christmas and the New Year, and the car stayed covered, and I told myself I would figure out what to do with it eventually. Eventually is a word engineers use when we mean not now, and possibly never. What I did not do, what I had no intention of doing, was sell it. My son Owen is 51 years old. He lives in Lake Oswego, 20 minutes south, in a house too large for 2 people with a kitchen remodel that cost more than my first 3 cars combined. His wife is Patricia. Patricia has very specific ideas about money, what it should look like, where it should live, whose hands it should move through on its way to where she's decided it belongs. I recognized this about her long before Ruth died. Ruth recognized it first. Owen is not a bad man in any way that's obvious. He's attentive when it costs him nothing. He calls on birthdays, shows up for holidays, and has a way of talking about his father to other people that sounds like tenderness and functions as inventory, taking stock, assessing what's there and how it might eventually be converted. After Ruth died, his calls became more frequent. He started asking about the house, whether it was too much space for one person, whether I'd thought about simplifying. He asked once about the investment accounts. I answered directly and changed the subject, the way a man does when he doesn't want to fight, but knows one is being assembled around him. I didn't know about the car until a Tuesday morning in March, 11 o'clock. I came inside from pulling winter weeds from the raised beds Ruth built the year before she got sick, and there was a message on the machine from a number I didn't recognize. I didn't listen right away. I made coffee first. I was still in the habit of making too much. Ruth drank her half. The message was from a man named Dale Kaufman, from Kaufman Classic Auto in Southeast Portland. Unhurried voice, pleasant. He said they'd recently acquired a 1967 Mustang Fastback, midnight blue, and during their documentation process, they'd located the original registration in the glove box with my name on it. He said he just wanted to make sure everything was in order. I listened to the message twice, then I went to the garage. I don't fully remember the walk across the backyard. I remember the smell. The cold smell of a closed garage in March, oil and concrete and old canvas. I walked to where the Mustang had been covered for 18 months, put my hands on the drop cloth, and lifted it. It wasn't heavy because there was nothing under it. The cloth rose and collapsed back on itself with a dry whisper. Empty. Just the dark stain on the concrete where oil had seeped in over the years. I stood there for a while. The garage was cold and still, and the drop cloth had settled into nothing at all. I called Owen. He answered on the second ring, which told me he was expecting me. I went out to the garage, I said. A pause. Then, Dad, I was going to tell you. I was waiting for the right time. When did you take it? 3 weeks ago. Patricia and I talked about it, and we thought, it's been sitting there for 18 months, and you haven't touched it. We thought it would help you, getting it out of the house. The grief counselor, that article I sent you. I didn't ask for your help. You never ask for help. That's the problem. You sit in that garage and look at things you can't change and call that being fine. His voice had a practiced quality, the rhythm of a conversation he'd rehearsed until it no longer felt like a rehearsal. We got $34,000 for it. I'll put it in an account for you. It's taken care of. You don't have to think about it. I noticed I was holding the phone very tightly. I made myself loosen my grip. Owen, that car was not yours to sell. Technically, as part of the shared estate. Your mother is not part of the estate. Your mother drove that car every Sunday for 14 years. My voice stayed level. I held it the way I hold a calibration instrument, deliberately, with effort, with the patience that isn't peace. You did not do this for me. I want you to hear me say I know that. I don't know why you're making this into something it isn't. I'm not making it into anything. I'm telling you what it is. A pause. I could hear Patricia somewhere behind him, the soft percussion of movement in a kitchen. Owen's voice shifted slightly when he registered her presence. A subtle recalibration, the way a compass needle adjusts when a magnet moves close. We'll talk when you've had time to calm down, he said. I hung up. I sat at the kitchen table and looked at my hands. An engineer's hands. 63 years of use on them. A husband's hands for 42 of those years. I thought about the point at which acceptable wear turns out to have been damage all along, and you only understand what happened when the thing finally gives. Then I went back and listened to Dale Kaufman's message a third time. His voice, unhurried and decent, filling the kitchen. The words, just want to make sure everything is in order. I wrote down his number on the notepad by the phone, the same one Ruth used for grocery lists, her handwriting still on the top 3 pages, which I had not torn off. I wrote Dale's number below her last list. Bread, lemons, the good olive oil. Then I sat with the quiet of the house, a specific kind of quiet, with a shape and a weight to it, the kind that accumulates over 18 months until it becomes the dominant feature of a room. I sat in it and waited for morning. I called Dale Kaufman the next morning at 8 o'clock, got his voicemail. I left my name and number and said I would appreciate a call back at his earliest convenience. Then I waited. That was how the next 3 weeks went, in the broad strokes. A man waiting in a house that had too much space in it. surrounded by the accumulated evidence of a life that was still mostly intact, and nonetheless felt like a structure whose load-bearing wall had been removed. The house didn't fall. It just shifted, subtly, permanently, in ways I noticed every morning when I moved through it. I know how to be alone. 18 months of practice had made me competent at it, if not comfortable. I knew which hours were hardest. Early evening, when the light changed and the kitchen should have smelled like something cooking. I knew to stay busy in those hours. I had a list of projects: the fence gate that needed rehinging, the gutters that needed clearing, a section of subflooring in the back bedroom that had developed a soft spot Ruth had been asking me to fix for 2 years. I'd been asking her to give me time. Now I had all the time I could stand. But this 3 weeks was different. This 3 weeks had the absence of the car in it. Not just the absence of Ruth, which I had learned to carry the way you learn to carry any persistent weight, by redistributing it, by building the muscles for it, by never setting it down in a place where you might forget to pick it back up. The absence of the car was different because it was a theft. Grief you absorb, theft you don't. I went into the garage every morning. I don't know what I was expecting. The dark stain on the concrete, the drop cloth folded on the shelf where I'd put it after that first terrible look. I'd stand in the garage doorway and look at the space where the Mustang had been, and the space where it had been had a quality I recognized from engineering. Negative space, the shape defined entirely by the absence of the thing that used to fill it. Engineers call this a void condition. I'd restored that car in this garage. 14 months. I knew every inch of it by feel. The slightly soft pedal travel on the clutch before the restoration, the right rear quarter panel that had taken 2 rounds of filling before the bodyman was satisfied, the way the driver's side window always needed a half-second extra to seal when you closed it fast. Not a flaw. A characteristic. The difference between a flaw and a characteristic is whether the system functions correctly. The Mustang always functioned correctly. I left messages for Dale Kaufman on a Wednesday, and again on a Friday. Not urgently. I didn't want urgency to be the quality of my outreach to a man I didn't yet know. The messages were brief. Name, number, reference to the car. I can be patient when patience is required. I was an engineer for 37 years. Half of engineering is knowing which variables you can control and which ones you can only wait on. What I was not doing, in those 3 weeks, was calling Owen back. He called twice. The first time, 4 days after our conversation, I let it go to the machine. He didn't leave a message. The second time was a Sunday evening. Sunday evenings were always his preferred time for calls he wanted to seem casual, and I picked up. He asked how I was doing. I said I was fine. He mentioned that the $34,000 was just sitting in an account waiting for me. I said I heard him. He said Patricia sent her love. I said thank you. We hung up. I sat with the phone for a moment after. 42 years of watching a man become his circumstances, and here were the circumstances he had chosen. Useful to know about a person. There was nothing in that conversation I hadn't expected to be there, and nothing in it I could use. The call I was waiting for came on a Thursday, late morning. I was in the back bedroom with a pry bar, working on the soft spot in the subfloor, when the phone rang. Mr. Park, this is Dale Kaufman, from Kaufman Classic Auto. I apologize for the delay. We've been backed up. His voice was the same as on the machine, unhurried, with a particular quality I associated with men who'd spent their careers around old things. Careful. Measured in a different way than engineers are measured. Engineers are precise because precision is required. Men like Dale Kaufman are careful because they've learned that not everything can be replaced. I appreciate you calling back, I said. Of course. You had questions about the Mustang. I did. The car belonged to my wife. She passed away 1.5 years ago. The registration was still in my name, which I take it is how you found me. A brief silence. When Dale spoke again, his voice had adjusted slightly, the way a room temperature changes when a window is opened. I'm very sorry for your loss, Mr. Park. Yes, the registration was in the glove box, in a folder, with the original owner's manual and service records. We called the number on file as a matter of practice, to make sure our documentation matched what the seller provided. What did the seller tell you? That the vehicle had been in the family. That the original owner was deceased. A careful pause. The title was clean. Everything was in order, technically speaking. I sat down at the kitchen table. Mr. Kaufman, I'd like to ask you something directly. Of course. When you called, when you left that message, you said you wanted to make sure everything was in order, but that wasn't the only reason, was it? A longer pause this time. I waited. I've learned that the right kind of silence pulls the truth out of a man, as well as any question. No, Dale Kaufman said. It wasn't. He told me about the envelope. His lead technician, 11 years with the shop, was doing preliminary interior inspection. Standard procedure before restoration work begins. Documentation of condition, identification of what needs attention, assessment of the trim panels before disassembly. On the rear driver's side, when he removed the interior door panel to check the window regulator and vapor barrier, he found it, taped flat to the inside metal surface of the door shell. A sealed envelope, standard letter size, cream-colored, nothing written on the outside. Taped how? I asked. Blue painter's tape, run across all 4 edges. It had been done carefully, still fully adhered. The envelope hadn't shifted. I thought about that. Ruth in the garage, standing on the running board to reach the open door panel. Careful, methodical. The way she did everything she wanted done right. How long do you estimate it had been there? I asked, because the engineer in me needed the timeline. The vapor barrier was intact, no moisture intrusion. The envelope itself was clean, no discoloration, corners still sharp. Our tech said it looked recent, 2-3 years at the outside. 4 months before her death, I would later learn, but I didn't know that yet. What did you do with it? I asked. It's here. It hasn't been opened. His voice had a quiet firmness to it. I want you to understand that. We don't open things that don't belong to us, Mr. Park. It's sealed, and it's here. And I called you because it seemed to me that a letter found inside a car that belonged to a woman who has passed, well, it seemed to me that ought to go to her family, not sit in a shop filing cabinet. I looked at the notepad on the counter. Ruth's grocery list. Bread, lemons, the good olive oil. Mr. Kaufman, I said, what would you say is a fair price to buy that car back? A short pause. I could hear him recalibrate. We were asking $38,000. I'll pay it. Mr. Park, that's above what? I know. I'll pay $38,000. When can I come in? Anytime, he said. And then, quietly, it's a beautiful car, Mr. Park. Whoever restored it did excellent work. I restored it, I said. I thought so, he said. We set the appointment for that Saturday morning. I hung up and stayed at the table for a moment. The house was quiet around me. The same quiet it had been for 18 months, but with something different in it now. Not lighter, exactly. More like a signal had come through static. Like a frequency I'd given up trying to tune had suddenly become clear. Ruth, in the garage. Somewhere in those last careful months, with painter's tape and an envelope, and something she needed me to find when the time was right. She knew I'd take care of the car. She knew, the way she always knew, the shape of how things would eventually resolve. I'd said eventually for 18 months and meant never, and she'd known even that, known that never would have an end point, known that the car would go somewhere, known that wherever it went, someone would open the door and find what she'd left inside. She'd built the finding into the system. She'd engineered it. I sat there for a while. Then I went back to the bedroom and finished the subflooring. It needed doing, and I had somewhere to be on Saturday. But I worked the rest of that afternoon with a different quality of attention. Not the mechanical focus I usually bring to a task, the part of the mind that narrows to the work and shuts everything else out. Something wider than that. Something that felt, if I'm being precise about it, like standing at the edge of a room you've been afraid to enter, and finally reaching out for the door. He offered to mail it. I told him I'd rather come by. I drove to Kaufman Classic Auto on a Thursday afternoon, 2 days before our Saturday appointment, and parked in the lot. The building was on a corner in southeast Portland, low and wide, with a pair of garage bays on the side and a clean showroom window facing the street. Through the glass, I could see the shapes of several cars. I didn't look for the Mustang. Dale Kaufman met me at the door. He was shorter than I'd expected, 60s, with careful eyes, and a handshake that communicated something I can only describe as respect for the weight of the occasion. He didn't ask me to sit down. He didn't offer coffee or make small talk. He went to the office behind the front counter, opened a file cabinet, and returned with a letter-sized envelope in a clear plastic sleeve. He handed it to me with both hands. "The sleeve is just to protect it," he said. "We didn't touch it beyond that." I held it. Through the plastic, I could see the envelope was cream-colored. The good stationery Ruth kept in the desk drawer in the study. The box she'd had for years, and used for things that mattered. Cards, important letters, the handwritten note she left in my briefcase on the morning of my last day at work. She was a woman who understood that the container is part of the message. Cream stationery meant, pay attention, this is real. There was no writing on the outside. I thanked Dale Kaufman. He held the door open and said he'd see me Saturday. I drove home. I didn't open it in the car. Part of it was that I was driving, and part of it was that I didn't want to read her handwriting for the first time at 60 miles an hour on the Barber Boulevard overpass. I wanted to be still. I set the envelope on the passenger seat and drove home with it in my peripheral vision the whole way, aware of its weight, aware of its presence the way you're aware of something about to change things irreversibly, and you are not yet ready. In the 18 months since Ruth died, I had handled her things carefully. Her reading glasses, still on the nightstand, the cardigan left on the back of the kitchen chair, her handwriting on the grocery list. I'd never torn off the notepad. I'd moved around these things the way you move around furniture in the dark, by feel, by memory, trying not to disturb the arrangement. I was afraid, I think, of the moment when those things would stop feeling like evidence of a living person and start feeling like artifacts. There's a difference. I know what artifacts are. Artifacts are what's left when the person is definitively past tense. Ruth's handwriting on a notepad was present tense. I needed it to stay that way a little longer. I sat at the kitchen table. I slid the envelope out of the plastic sleeve. I held it for a moment, then I opened it. Inside was a single folded sheet of the same cream paper, covered on both sides in Ruth's handwriting. Her script was distinctive, not elegant in the way people mean when they say a woman has nice handwriting, but specific. She pressed down hard with the pen. The letters were decisive and slightly uneven because she thought faster than her hand moved and never slowed down to compensate. I had loved her handwriting for 42 years. I had loved it the way you love anything that has the specific quality of the person it comes from. Not because it was beautiful, but because it was exactly, unmistakably her. I unfolded the letter and read it. Leonard. I'm writing this in the study on a Thursday afternoon in June. It's warm. The window is open and I can hear the neighbor's dog and someone somewhere is mowing a lawn. I want you to have that detail. I want you to know I was comfortable when I wrote this, and thinking clearly, and not afraid. This letter has been in the door panel of the Mustang for 3 weeks. I put it there because I know you. You will keep that car. You will never sell it, and you will never let anyone else drive it, and you will never, not for a long time, uncover it. But eventually you will, because you're an engineer, and you can't let a machine sit forever. You'll need to check on it. You'll take care of it. The way you take care of everything you love. Slowly and thoroughly, and without making a fuss. And when you do, when someone finally opens that door, I want this to be there. I know you'll find this when you're ready. I know you, Leonard. You'll take care of the car. I need to tell you about the money. 4 months ago, I moved $890,000 from our joint account into a savings account opened in your name only. The account is at Pacific Northwest Federal. Marcus Osei is the branch manager at the Southeast Hawthorne branch, and I've already spoken with him. He knows this letter exists. He knows your name. When you go in, bring this letter and your identification, and he will take care of everything. The account number is in my address book, under O for Osei. I moved the money because of Patricia. I want to be fair about this, because fairness matters to me. Patricia is not a monster. She is a woman who decided a long time ago that security meant control, and that love was a system for resource allocation. And she has spent 20 years running that system through our son. Owen goes along with it because going along is easier than having a self, and because somewhere underneath the going along I think he genuinely believes her. That's the hardest part to say. I don't think he knows what he is. I think he believes he's taking care of things. But I have watched how they talk about your retirement accounts at dinner. I have watched Patricia's eyes move when we mention the house. I watched what happened when your cousin Gerald died and left that money to his nephew, and I heard what Patricia said about it afterward, and I have not forgotten. I am not willing to let what we built together become a resource allocation problem for Patricia. The $890,000 is yours, Leonard. I'm not telling you what to do with it. Do what seems right. But I want it in your hands, not within anyone else's reach, before I'm no longer here. I chose the Mustang because you built it for me, and I trust it. I trust it the way I trust you, because it's been tested, because it's held up, because I know what's inside it. I love you. I have loved you with a great deal of precision and intention for 42 years, which I believe you will recognize as the highest compliment I know how to pay. Take care of yourself. Take care of the car. In that order, please. Ruth. P.S. The subflooring in the back bedroom has a soft spot near the closet. Please fix it. I read the letter twice. Then I put it down on the table and sat with it for a while. The kitchen was quiet. Late afternoon light came through the window over the sink, the particular yellow-amber light of April, and it fell across Ruth's handwriting on the cream paper. I looked at it and I thought, she was comfortable. She was thinking clearly. She was not afraid. She'd written a postscript about the subflooring. I had fixed it 2 days ago. I sat there for a long time. I thought about 42 years. I thought about a woman who'd loved me with precision and intention, and who'd spent her last months building a system of protection around me, so carefully that I hadn't known it was there. She'd put it inside the car because she trusted the car. She'd trusted the car because I built it. The chain of it. The engineering of it. I folded the letter carefully and returned it to the envelope. I put the envelope in the inside pocket of my jacket, against my chest. Then I went to the address book in the study, the small green one she kept in the desk drawer, and I turned to the O section. There it was in her handwriting. Marcus Osei, Pacific Northwest Federal, Southeast Hawthorne, and below the phone number, a 10-digit account number. Precise, methodical, exactly, unmistakably her. I closed the address book. I went to the kitchen and made dinner, a thing I had not done with any real intention in 18 months. I cooked the way she'd taught me, slowly, with attention, not rushing the heat. I made enough for one, and that felt right. Outside, the April evening was softening into dark. A neighbor's dog barked somewhere down the street, then stopped. I ate at the table with the envelope in my jacket and the address book open beside my plate, and I thought about a woman at a study desk in June, window open, a lawnmower somewhere in the distance, pressing a pen hard on cream paper because she thought faster than her hand could move and never slowed down to compensate. She had done this for me while she was dying. She had spent part of her last months on it. She had thought of the car and the door panel and the painter's tape, and she had thought of Marcus Osei at Pacific Northwest Federal on Southeast Hawthorne and the address book under O. She had thought of everything. Saturday, I would get the car. I arrived at Kaufman Classic Auto at 9 Saturday morning. The lot was quiet at that hour, the April air still cold. I parked on the street. Dale Kaufman was already inside, a coffee mug in his hand, moving toward the door before I reached it. He let me in without ceremony. I appreciated that. The Mustang was in the near bay, off the main showroom floor. They'd moved it under better lighting, a pair of overhead fluorescents, and a portable work light casting a clean, shadowless glow across the body panels. Midnight blue. I stood in the bay doorway and looked at it. It was exactly as I remembered. More than that, it was exactly as I'd left it. The restoration had held well. The paint still had its depth, the kind you only get with proper prep work and multiple coats. The chrome had a few small pits from road debris, which I'd noticed and chosen to leave. Ruth had asked me why. I told her honest imperfections are more interesting than artificial perfection. She'd said that was the most Leonard Park thing I'd ever said. I walked around the car once, slowly, the way I always inspected work, moving clockwise, starting at the driver's front quarter. Panel gaps, paint condition, glass seals, trim alignment, everything sound. Dale Kaufman stood near the bay door and watched me without speaking, which told me he was a man who understood the ritual of looking. When I came back around to the driver's side, I stopped. 38,000, I said. Mr. Park, I want to be straight with you. Given the circumstances, we're prepared to. 38 is what you're asking, and 38 is what I'm paying. I looked at him. You kept the letter safe. You called me when you didn't have to. I'm not interested in negotiating. He held my gaze for a moment and then gave a short nod. We went to the office and completed the paperwork. I paid by certified check, which I'd prepared the day before. He handed me the keys and the title, and we shook hands in the doorway of the bay. He said if I ever needed anything, a restoration supplier he trusted, a contact for chrome work, I should call him. I said I would. I think we both knew I meant it. I got in the car. The interior was as I'd left it, though the shop had done a preliminary wipe-down. The dash was clean, the glass clear. I put my hands on the steering wheel, and I remembered the first time I'd sat in it after the restoration was finished. The engine running for the first time in the driveway, the particular satisfaction of a system performing within spec. I'd built this. Every tolerance, every fitting, every inch of wiring I'd sorted and routed. I knew what was in this car, the way Ruth had said she knew what was in me. I sat in it for a moment before I started it. The garage smelled of mineral spirits and steel, and the faint vanilla undertone of old vinyl warming under the work light. I thought about Ruth picking up the painter's tape in the hardware aisle. I thought about her standing on the running board, reaching into the open door panel, pressing the envelope flat against the metal. Patient, methodical, doing it right, making sure the tape caught all four edges. I turned the key. The engine came up exactly as it should. A clean idle, settling in after 10 seconds to something steady and right. I let it warm. 2 minutes. I listened to it. An engine idling at temperature is one of the most orderly sounds in the world if the work is good. And the work on this engine was good. It had always been good. I drove home. The route from southeast Portland takes you through the River Road section where Ruth used to take it on Sundays, and I drove it now without planning to. The way you take a familiar route, when your hands know the turns better than your mind does. The morning traffic was light. The Willamette was flat and silver through the breaks in the tree line. I held the car at 40 miles an hour and let the engine run at a comfortable RPM, and I thought about almost nothing at all, which for me is the closest thing to peace I know how to find. She had loved this road. Twice a month, not fast, just moving. Just being inside something made with intention. I brought it home and pulled into the garage and turned the engine off. The quiet after a V8 idles down has a particular quality, the engine ticking as it cools, the absence of sound pressing in around it. I sat in the driver's seat and listened. The midnight blue hood a few feet in front of me, the familiar smell of the garage, the dark stain on the concrete, just visible in my peripheral vision past the front wheel. She was home. That was what I thought. Imprecise. For an engineer. True enough. I left the drop cloth folded on the shelf. I went to the bank on Monday. Pacific Northwest Federal on Southeast Hawthorne. A low brick building with a small parking lot and a row of ornamental cherries just past bloom. Petals on the ground. I brought Ruth's letter, my identification, and the address book. I was not certain what to expect. The account was in my name, but the bureaucracy of death is unpredictable, and I'd spent enough time after she died dealing with institutions that processed grief like a compliance workflow. I asked for Marcus Osei at the front desk. The teller called back, and within 2 minutes a man appeared, early 50s, compact and measured in his movements, with the kind of deliberate calm that told me he dealt regularly with situations that required it. He extended his hand. "Mr. Park, I've been expecting you." He said it simply, without drama. And those 4 words reached me in a way I didn't anticipate. She'd been here. She'd sat across from this man and told him about me, and he'd kept her confidence for 18 months, steady and prepared, exactly as she'd arranged. He led me to his office, a glass-walled room off the main floor, quiet. I gave him the letter and my identification. He read the letter carefully, the whole thing, and when he was done he looked up and said, "She was very thorough." "She was," I said. "She came in twice, once when she opened the account, and once 3 weeks later, after the deposit cleared. She wanted to make sure I understood the situation." A small pause. She was very clear about what she wanted. He turned to his computer and entered a series of information, cross-referencing my identification with the account records. I sat across from his desk and kept my hands still on my knees and waited. The branch was quiet. Outside the glass wall, a teller helped a young woman with a transaction, ordinary Monday morning business, proceeding in an ordinary way, entirely indifferent to what was happening in this office. Marcus Osei turned the monitor toward me. $890,412. The $412 was interest accrued over the account's life. "Everything is in order, Mr. Park. The account is in your name, sole ownership. No co-signatories, no authorized representatives. We can transfer the balance to any account you designate, or it can remain here." He paused. "Mrs. Park asked me to tell you she hoped you'd find it useful." Those were her words. I looked at the figure on the monitor for a moment. She had moved this money quietly, precisely, without telling me, because she'd known that if she told me I would have objected. Not to the amount, to the idea of it. I would have said I didn't need protecting. I would have said I could handle my own affairs. She'd known that too. She'd done it anyway, because she'd seen what I hadn't let myself see, and she'd loved me enough to protect me from my own blind spots. "Leave it here for now," I said. "I'll be making changes to my estate arrangements in the next few weeks, and I'll want to revisit the transfer question when that's settled." He nodded. He printed the account details and the current balance, and put them in a sealed envelope and handed it across the desk. We shook hands. He walked me to the front door himself, which I thought was a mark of the man. Outside, the ornamental cherry petals were still on the sidewalk, pale pink against the concrete. I stood for a moment in the morning air. $890,000. 1 letter, 1 envelope, blue painter's tape on all 4 edges. A woman at a desk in June thinking about the shape of what came next and building the structure to hold it, one careful piece at a time, the way a good engineer accounts for load and failure and the things that are certain to happen, whether you prepare for them or not. I went to my car. I called my attorney's office from the parking lot and asked for an appointment at his earliest convenience. His name was Philip Yun. I'd had the same estate attorney for 23 years. He called back within the hour, and we set a meeting for Wednesday morning. I told him I needed to make substantial revisions. He asked if everything was all right. I said yes. I said everything, for the first time in quite a while, was exactly as it should be. Philip Yun's office was on the 14th floor of a building downtown, with a view of the river on clear days. Wednesday was clear. I sat across from him at a conference table with the sealed bank envelope in front of me, and Ruth's letter, and the account details from Marcus Osei, and I told him what I wanted to do. Philip is a careful man, 60 years old, methodical, the kind of attorney who thinks 3 moves ahead on everything and tells you what he sees without editorializing. We had known each other for 23 years and built the kind of professional relationship that becomes, gradually and without announcement, a friendship. He had helped Ruth and me draft our original wills. He had handled the probate after her death. He knew the shape of our lives with the particular intimacy that comes from knowing where a person's money goes. He listened to everything without interrupting. When I was done, he was quiet for a moment, looking at the documents. "You want to disinherit Owen entirely," he said. "Entirely. And Patricia. Patricia is not in my will at present. What I want is to make certain Owen's exclusion is complete and unambiguous, with no pathway for challenge." He nodded slowly. "That's achievable. Oregon law gives you broad latitude to distribute your estate as you choose. An explicit written statement of intent is the cleanest way to foreclose a contest." He paused. The granddaughter. Sophie, I said. Sophie Park. She's 24. Owen's daughter from his first marriage, which means Patricia is her stepmother, which means she is not well loved in that house. She's a good person. She calls me on Sunday evenings and asks how I'm doing, and means it. She liked Ruth. Philip made a note. The Mustang, the estate, and the full account balance. Everything. The house when it eventually goes, the investment accounts, the balance at Pacific Northwest Federal, the car. I thought for a moment. I'd like the car to go to her specifically, named in the document, not folded into a general bequest. We can do that. He looked at me over the top of his glasses. Leonard, you understand that when Owen finds out, this is going to be a significant confrontation. I know. He may contest it. He'll have limited grounds, but he may try. Let him try. Philip looked at me for another moment, then returned to his legal pad. We spent 2 hours going through the details. The will, the trust structure, the specific language. Philip was thorough. I was thorough. Between the two of us, we built something solid and precise, with the load-bearing elements clearly identified and the failure points accounted for. When we were finished, he said the formal documents would be ready for signature within a week. I thanked him. We shook hands. He walked me to the elevator and told me, standing in the hallway, that he thought what I was doing was right. I told him I appreciated that, but that I wasn't doing it because it was right. I was doing it because it was true. He said, in his experience, those were often the same thing. Owen found out on a Friday. I don't know exactly how, whether Sophie mentioned something, whether Owen's own attorney had contacts, whether Patricia had simply developed a sixth sense for the movement of money. It doesn't matter. What matters is that the phone rang at 7 in the evening, which was not a Sunday, and when I answered, his voice was not the careful, practiced voice I'd been hearing for the past year. It was undone. That's the word I'd choose. He sounded undone. I just got off the phone with my attorney, he said. You're cutting me out. I sat down in the kitchen chair. Outside the window the evening was still, the neighbor's yard quiet, the light going soft and amber the way April evenings do. I kept my voice level. Yes, I said. You're leaving everything, to Sophie. Yes. A sound came through the phone that I can only describe as the noise a person makes when a structure they believed was permanent reveals itself as provisional. Not quite anger yet. Something that precedes anger. The realizing. Dad, after everything, after 30 years of being your son, of showing up, of selling your mother's car while I was asleep. Silence. That's what this is about? His voice shifted, finding familiar ground. The practiced register of a man who had long been in the habit of reframing other people's grievances until they became smaller than his own. One decision that I made because I was trying to help. Owen, I said it quietly, stop. He stopped. I'm not doing this because of the car. The car is what woke me up, but I'm not punishing you for a single decision. I'm recognizing a pattern I should have named a long time ago. A pattern. The word came back flat, incredulous. You're disinheriting your son because of a pattern. I'm leaving my estate to my granddaughter because Sophie is a person who calls on Sunday evenings and asks how I'm doing and means it. Because Sophie sent flowers every month for the first year after her grandmother died and did not ask me once what I planned to do with the house. Because Sophie is what your mother hoped you would be, and she is what I should have been paying attention to. The silence this time was different, longer. I could hear him breathing. Mom would never, he started. Your mother knew, Owen. I said it quietly. Not with anger, with precision. She knew before I did. Another silence. When he spoke again, his voice had changed. Something underneath it now. Something younger and less managed. And for a moment, I heard the boy he'd been before he became the man Patricia needed him to be. What does that mean? It means that she moved $890,000 out of our joint account 4 months before she died, and put it somewhere you couldn't find it. And she hid the instructions in the door panel of her car. And she did all of it alone, quietly, because she'd been watching you both for years, and she didn't trust what she saw. I let that land. I did not cushion it. She protected me, Owen, from you and from Patricia, and she did it while she was dying, because she loved me, and because she knew. Nothing, for a long time. The line stayed open. I could hear the particular quality of a person who has run out of the shape they were trying to hold. I didn't know he started. I know you didn't, I said, and I meant it. That's part of it. I waited one more moment, to make sure there was nothing else I needed to say. There wasn't. Everything had been said cleanly, and without excess. An engineer's communication. No wasted words, no imprecision. The tolerances exactly right. Take care of yourself, I said. Then I hung up. I went to the garage. I didn't turn on the overhead light. The side window let in enough of the late evening to see by. The workbench along the far wall, the shelves with their organized bins of hardware, the drop cloth folded where I'd left it, and the Mustang, midnight blue in the half-dark, its shape familiar and exact the way only something you have built with your own hands can be. I opened the driver's door and sat down. The seat settled around me the way it always had. The steering wheel was where it should be. My hands went to it without thinking. The 10-2 position, the natural grip. The engine was off and the garage was quiet, and I sat in the specific silence of a space that holds everything it was built to hold. I thought about Ruth in this seat. Sunday mornings, the river road, the engine breathing. The way she ran her hand along the dashboard. The words she used. Intention. I thought about a Thursday afternoon in June. A study window open. A pen pressing down hard on cream paper. A woman building something that would outlast her by however long it needed to last. Precise in the materials she chose. Precise in the hiding place. Trusting the car because she trusted the man who built it. I thought about Sophie, who called on Sunday evenings and meant it. Who would inherit a midnight blue 1967 Mustang Fastback from a grandfather who was going to call her this weekend and tell her the story from the beginning, all of it, so she understood what she was receiving and why. Not just a car, a vault, a letter, a woman's last careful act. The garage was cool and still around me. The engine, unstarted, held its silence. The dark stain on the concrete was just visible past the front wheel, where oil had been seeping in for 20 years, a record in the floor. I sat there for a long time. Outside, the April night was coming in. Somewhere distant, a dog barked once and stopped. The neighbor's porch light came on, and threw a thin bar of yellow through the side window, crossing the hood of the Mustang in a line of light. I didn't feel her absence in that moment. Or perhaps I did, and the absence had finally taken on the shape of something I could carry without putting down. Grief changes its form after long enough. It doesn't go. It becomes architectural. It becomes load-bearing. It becomes part of the structure of a room, and the room still stands, and you learn to live in it. And sometimes in the evenings you sit in the driver's seat of a midnight blue car your wife trusted with her last careful secret, and the silence is not empty. She knew, I thought. She knew before I did. She usually did.